I've spent 35 years as a trauma surgeon, and I can tell you that some wounds aren't visible on the outside. The ones that cut deepest are the ones you never see coming, especially when they're inflicted by someone who's supposed to become family. My name is Martha, and I should have trusted my instincts the moment Lila walked through my front door. The way she surveyed my living room, with that slight curl of her lip, told me everything I needed to know about my son's fiancée. What a quaint little house, she said, running her finger along my coffee table. I can see why Ethan was so eager to move out. I bit my tongue, remembering my promise to my son. Be nice, Mom, he'd pleaded over the phone. This is important to me. So instead of responding, I busied myself arranging the photo albums I'd gathered for this first meeting. Ethan hadn't arrived yet, stuck in traffic, according to his text, which left me alone with this woman who'd somehow convinced my brilliant but trusting son to propose after just 6 months of dating. Would you like some tea? I offered, falling back on decades of ingrained hospitality. Oh, no thank you, Lila replied, still standing despite my gesture toward the couch. I only drink imported loose leaf. Caffeine sensitivity, you know. She drifted toward the mantel, where photos of Ethan's childhood shared space with the urn containing my late husband's ashes. Is this sterling silver? She asked, reaching for the urn. Please don't touch that, I said sharply, then forced myself to soften my tone. It's very precious to me. Of course, she smiled, but her hand lingered near it. Though it's a bit old-fashioned, isn't it? Most people opt for scattering these days. More hygienic. Before I could respond, she'd moved on to examining the family photos. Oh my, Ethan was such an awkward teenager. Thank goodness he grew into his looks. She glanced at me sideways. Though I suppose we all have our awkward phases. Some of us just never quite grow out of them. My phone buzzed, another text from Ethan. Accident on the highway. He'd be at least another 20 minutes. Well, Lila sighed, finally perching on the edge of my sofa like she was afraid it might stain her designer dress. Since we have some time, maybe we should discuss the wedding. I'm thinking a destination ceremony. Probably the Maldives. I know it might be a stretch for some people's budgets, but we can't plan around everyone, can we? I thought of Ethan's modest software engineer salary, of the student loans he was still paying off. Have you and Ethan discussed the costs? Oh, don't worry about that, she waved dismissively. Once we're married, we'll have access to his trust fund, won't we? I froze. What trust fund? The one from his grandfather? She leaned forward, suddenly intent. The inheritance? Ethan mentioned it was quite substantial. There's no trust fund, I said slowly. Henry's father was a high school teacher. Everything we have, we earned ourselves. The mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of something cold and calculating in those perfectly made-up eyes. Then she laughed, a tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. Oh, there must be some misunderstanding. Ethan definitely mentioned. She trailed off, checking her phone. Oh, would you look at that? I completely forgot about a client meeting. Rain check. She was out the door before I could respond, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive perfume and a growing knot of dread in my stomach. I picked up my phone and opened my browser. It was time to find out exactly who Lila Jennings really was and what she wanted with my son. Sometimes a mother's instinct is worth more than all the benefit of the doubt in the world. I just hoped I wasn't too late to stop what was coming. The bridal shop's bell chimed as I pushed open the door, already 15 minutes late. Not my fault, emergency hospital board meeting. But from Lila's expression, you'd think I'd personally insulted her ancestors. Martha, how nice of you to finally join us, she said, her voice dripping honey over vinegar. We've already selected the bridesmaids' dresses. I scanned the room. No other mothers present, just Lila's college friends clustered around her like a flock of designer-clad peacocks. The dresses they'd chosen were a shade of coral that would make me look like I had liver failure. I thought we agreed on blue, I said, remembering the conversation with Ethan last week. He'd mentioned it was his preference, given how it was his father's favorite color. Lila's laugh tinkled through the boutique. Oh, that was just a preliminary idea. Coral is much more now. Besides, she added, smoothing down the silk of her sample dress, blue is so common. One of her friends, Taylor, Tiffany, snickered behind her hand. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. How's it going with Lila? Playing nice. Before I could respond, Lila's voice cut through the air. No phones during fittings, Martha. It's rather rude. She turned to the attendant. Now about the mother of the groom dress options. The rack, she gestured to, held exactly 3 dresses, all in various shades of beige. The kind of dresses designed to make the wearer fade into the background. I actually found something at Nordstrom, I said, pulling up a photo on my phone, a elegant navy silk that had cost more than I'd spent on clothes in years. Oh, Lila's nose wrinkled. That's a bit bold for the mother of the groom, don't you think? We wouldn't want to draw attention away from the bride. Heaven forbid, I muttered, then caught myself. I just thought. Martha, she interrupted, stepping closer and lowering her voice, I know you mean well, but this is my day. My vision. Ethan agrees with everything I've planned. He wants me to be happy. She paused, her eyes flickering to the photo of Henry on my phone screen. It must be hard, planning this without your husband. Perhaps that's why you're being so difficult. The boutique suddenly felt too small, too warm. I should go check on those hospital reports, I said, gathering my purse. Text me the final dress selection. Of course, Lila smiled. Oh, and Martha? The destination wedding details are set. The Maldives, just as I mentioned. I know it's a bit pricey, but I'm sure you can dip into your retirement fund. It's only once your son gets married, right? I froze halfway to the door. Ethan agreed to this? He wants to make me happy, she repeated, her voice soft but firm. Isn't that what you want too? Outside, I leaned against my car, taking deep breaths like I used to before complicated surgeries. My phone buzzed again, another text from Ethan. Mom? Everything okay? I started typing we need to talk, but deleted it. Started again. Your fiancé has expensive tastes. Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, everything's fine. Love you. That evening, alone in my study, I opened my laptop. The search bar blinked at me. Lila Jennings background check. My finger hovered over the enter key. Henry's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. Trust your gut, Martha. It never steered you wrong in the oar. The front door slammed, making me jump. Mom, Ethan called out. Lila said you left the fitting early. What's going on? I closed the laptop. In here, honey. He appeared in the doorway, looking so much like his father it made my heart ache. Mom, I know Lila can be intense, but she really wants this wedding to be perfect. At what cost? I asked quietly. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could answer, his phone chimed. It's Lila, he said, already turning away. We're looking at venues tonight. Don't wait up. I watched him go, then reopened my laptop. Sometimes being a good mother means being willing to be the bad guy. I hit enter. The country club's marble floors echoed with the click of expensive heels and forced laughter. I hadn't planned to be here. Benny's shopping wasn't exactly on my to-do list after discovering 3 different names associated with Lila Jennings in my background search. But Ethan had begged, and here I was, watching my son's fiancée charm the event coordinator like a pro. The space is lovely, Lila gushed, but we'll need to discuss some upgrades. Those chandeliers are a bit dated. I checked the pricing sheet in my hand, already calculating the growing expenses. The basic package alone cost more than Ethan's annual salary. Mom, Ethan whispered, noticing my expression. I know what you're thinking, but I've got it covered. I'm taking some extra consulting work. Before I could respond, voices drifted from around the corner. Lila's distinctive laugh, followed by words that made me freeze. Of course I love him, Sarah. But love doesn't pay for Gucci bags. A pause. No, he doesn't know about the credit cards yet, or the loans. But once we're married. Another laugh. His salary's decent enough for now, but I've got plans. That coding side project he's working on? With the right push, it could be the next big startup. And startups mean investors, which means... I stepped around the corner, making enough noise to announce my presence. Lila spun around, phone clutched to her chest. Martha. I was just. She composed herself quickly. Sarah and I were discussing the catering options. Such difficult decisions. I heard, I said flatly, all about the difficult decisions. Something flickered in her eyes, fear, maybe, or calculation. But before either of us could speak, Ethan appeared. The coordinator's ready for us, he said, oblivious to the tension. They're showing us the honeymoon suite next. Perfect timing. Lila latched onto his arm, shooting me a warning glance. Martha, you don't need to stay for this part. It's been such a long day for you already. Actually, I started. Ethan, we need to. Mom, he cut me off, his voice tight. Can we not do this now? Please. I watched them walk away, Lila's voice already chirping about silk sheets and champagne service. My phone felt heavy in my pocket, the recording app still running. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the mortgage statement Ethan had left behind. He'd been approved for a loan that would drain him dry, all to fund Lila's dream wedding. Next to it lay the printouts from my search. Lila Jenkins, Lila Jensen, Lila James, 3 different cities, 3 broken engagements, 3 bankruptcies left in her wake. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Lila alone. I know what you heard today, she said as soon as I opened the door. And what you've probably found out by now. Then you know why I can't let this continue. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You really think Ethan will believe you over me? The bitter mother who can't let go. She stepped closer. I love your son, Martha. Maybe not the way you think I should, but I do. And I can give him the life he deserves. The life you deserve, you mean? We all want better than what we came from. Her voice hardened. You had your chance at life. Let Ethan have his. By bankrupting him? By pushing him to be more than just another coding drone in a cubicle. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Martha? If you try to show him those background checks or that recording from today, remember, nothing hurts a mother more than losing her child completely. After she left, I sat in Henry's old armchair, my hands shaking. On the mantel, his urn caught the evening light, and I could almost hear his voice. Sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd found in my research. Hello, I said when someone answered. My name is Martha Caldwell. I need to speak with James Morrison about his former fiancée, Lila Jenkins. James Morrison's voice crackled over my phone's speaker in the darkness of my study. I should have warned the next one. I couldn't face it. The shame, you know? 3 hours into our conversation, and the pattern was clear. The expensive gifts, the mounting debt, the push for a lavish wedding, then the disappearance, along with whatever savings her target had accumulated. She left 2 weeks before the wedding, he said. Cleared out our joint account. I didn't even know she had access. I glanced at my watch. 2 a.m. My screen filled with screenshots James had sent. Credit card statements, loan applications, a restraining order filed by another ex-fiancé. Each document felt like another nail in a coffin I didn't want to close. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Need to talk. Coming over for breakfast tomorrow. Thank you, James, I said. I appreciate. A sharp knock at my front door cut me off. Through the window, I saw Ethan's car in my driveway. I have to go, I whispered, ending the call. When I opened the door, Ethan's face was pale in the porch light. Were you just on the phone with James Morrison? My blood ran cold. How did you? Lila saw the call history on my phone. You used it last week to make a doctor's appointment, remember? His voice shook. She got curious, did some checking. Found out you've been digging into her past. Ethan, please let me explain. Explain what? That you hired a private investigator? That you've been calling her exes? He pushed past me into the house. She told me you might do something like this. Said you couldn't stand seeing me happy with someone else. Happy. I followed him into the living room. Is that what you call mortgaging your future for someone who what, Mom? Who loves me? Who believes in me more than anyone else ever has? More than I do. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want me to be safe, comfortable. Just like Dad, working the same job for 30 years, living in the same house. Your father was a good man. He was a small man. Ethan's voice cracked. And Lila's right. You want the same small life for me. The words hit like a physical blow. I steadied myself against the wall, feeling the texture of the wallpaper Henry and I had picked out together 20 years ago. She showed me the recording. Ethan continued quietly. The one you made at the country club. My heart stopped. Then you heard what she said about. I heard her talking about believing in my potential, about pushing me to be more. He moved toward the door. She already explained the name changes, protecting herself from an abusive ex. The bankruptcies? Business ventures that failed because people like you wouldn't give her a chance. And you believe that? I believe she loves me. He paused at the door. The wedding's in 3 weeks. You can either accept that and be there or... The unfinished sentence hung between us like a guillotine. After he left, I sat in the dark, staring at my phone. The evidence was all there, the pattern, the lies, the manipulation. But showing it to Ethan now would only push him further away. My laptop chimed with an email notification. From Lila, sent to both Ethan and me. Found the perfect wedding photographer. Only $15,000 for the premium package. Ethan, honey, I added it to our joint account expenses. Martha, since you insisted on contributing, shall we split it? Below was a link to transfer funds. I opened my banking app, fingers hovering over the keyboard. If I played along, stayed close, maybe I could prevent the worst from happening. But Henry's voice echoed in my memory. The truth costs, Martha, but lies cost more. I closed the laptop and picked up my phone again. James Morrison had mentioned another ex-fiancé, someone named Michael Chen who'd lost everything. Sometimes to save someone, you have to risk losing them first. I started dialing. Ethan's birthday party at the Silver Oak Country Club felt like a performance where everyone knew their lines except me. I watched from the corner as Lila worked the room, her laugh carrying across the space like wind chimes in a storm. More champagne, Martha? The server appeared at my elbow. The bride-to-be insisted on the premium selection. Of course she did. I'd seen the invoice, $3,000 for champagne alone, charged to Ethan's credit card. Martha, a woman's voice cut through my thoughts. I thought that was you. I turned to find Sarah Chun, a former colleague from my surgery days. We hadn't spoken in years, not since she'd moved to private practice. I didn't expect to see you here, I said. My husband Michael knows Lila, or knew her, I should say. Sarah's voice dropped, though that was when she went by Lila Jenkins. The name for my investigation. Michael Chen, the ex-fiancé I hadn't been able to reach. Before I could respond, Lila materialized between us. Dr. Chen, I didn't realize you'd be attending. Michael sends his regrets, Sarah replied coolly. He's still dealing with the bankruptcy proceedings. Something dangerous flashed in Lila's eyes. How unfortunate. If you'll excuse us, I need to borrow Martha for the toast. She gripped my arm with manicured fingers, steering me away. Careful with Sarah, she murmured. She's bitter about her husband's failed business ventures. Loves to spread rumors. Like the rumor about you emptying their joint accounts? Lila's grip tightened. You know, Martha, I've been patient, understanding even, but you're becoming a problem. Mom, Ethan appeared, flushed with champagne and happiness. Come on, it's time for speeches. I watched Lila transform, her threatening demeanor melting into adoring fiancé in the space of a breath. Darling, I thought your mother might want to go first. All eyes turned to me. I gripped my champagne flute, feeling trapped. I'm not sure I... Please, Mom. Ethan's smile, so much like Henry's, made my chest ache. I raised my glass, words sticking in my throat. To my son, who... Actually, Sarah's voice rang out. I'd like to say something first. Lila moved with surprising speed, but not fast enough. Sarah was already speaking. To new beginnings, she said, her gaze locked on Lila. And to learning from the past. Michael wanted me to give you something, Lila. Or should I say, Miss Jenkins? She reached into her purse. Security. Lila called out sharply. This woman needs to leave. 2 guards appeared, but Sarah was already placing a thick manila envelope on the gift table. "Just some old photos," she said as they escorted her out. "From your last engagement party. The one where you—" The closing doors cut off her words, but the damage was done. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Lila recovered quickly, laughing it off as the ravings of a disturbed woman. But I saw Ethan pick up the envelope, saw the question in his eyes as he glanced between his fiancée and the closing doors. Later, as guests were leaving, I found the envelope torn open and empty in the trash. Ethan and Lila had disappeared early, citing a headache. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "There's more where that came from. Michael's ready to talk." Another message followed immediately. "Better hurry. Wedding's in 2 weeks." I stared at the messages, remembering the look on Ethan's face when Sarah mentioned Lila's other name. For the first time, I'd seen doubt in his eyes. My phone buzzed again. "Lila, my lawyer will be in touch regarding Dr. Chen's slanderous behavior. I trust you had nothing to do with her presence tonight." I didn't reply. Instead, I dialed Sarah's number. "Michael will meet you," she answered without preamble. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m., at the Capitol Diner." "I'll be there, Martha." Sarah paused. "Be careful. She's dangerous when she's cornered." I ended the call, thinking of the empty envelope and Ethan's troubled eyes. Tomorrow would change everything. I just prayed my son would forgive me for what I had to do next. The Capitol Diner's neon sign flickered in the early morning rain, but Michael Chen never showed. Instead, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Michael's in the hospital. Accident last night." Lila was seen near his office. I sat in my car, watching raindrops trace patterns on the windshield, when a familiar Mercedes pulled into the space next to mine. Lila stepped out, immaculate despite the weather. "Let's talk inside," she said, tapping my window. Not a request. The diner was nearly empty. We took a booth far from the few early morning customers, the vinyl seats squeaking under us like nervous witnesses. $50,000, Lila said without preamble, sliding an envelope across the table. "To skip the wedding and never contact Ethan again." I left the envelope untouched. "Did you visit Michael Chen last night?" "Unfortunate. What happened to him?" "Ice can be so treacherous." She stirred her coffee, the spoon clinking against fine-boned china she'd brought herself. "The envelope, Martha. Take it." "Or what?" "More accidents. You know what's interesting about hospitals?" Her smile never reached her eyes. "So many things can go wrong. Medication mix-ups, equipment failures, especially in hospital administration offices after hours." My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my phone. "I'm recording this." "No, you're not." She held up my phone. She must have taken it when she sat down. "And your backup recorder is still in your purse." "Amateur move, Martha. I expected better from you." The waitress approached. Lila waved her away with practiced elegance. "Here's what's going to happen," she continued. "You'll take the money and disappear. Tell Ethan whatever story you like, health issues, early retirement, spiritual journey. I don't care. But if you don't—" She slid another envelope across the table. Photos spilled out. Me entering James Morrison's apartment building, meeting Sarah Chen, even screenshots of my search history. "Imagine how Ethan would feel," she mused, "knowing his mother hired private investigators to stalk his fiancée. That she conspired with my enemies to ruin my reputation. That she's been lying to him for months. He'd understand I was protecting him. Would he? The same way he understood about the trust fund lie? Or your little recording attempt at the country club." She leaned forward. "Face it, Martha. You've already lost him. The only question is whether you lose him with $50,000 in your pocket or with nothing but regret." My chest tightened. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I deserve it." Something raw flashed across her face. "I grew up with nothing. Watched my mother scrub floors while dreaming of better. I swore I'd never live that life." She straightened, mask back in place. "Ethan is my chance. My last chance. I won't let you ruin it. He loves you." "Yes, he does. And I'll make him happy. Happier than living in your shadow, measuring himself against your expectations." She stood, smoothing her designer dress. You have until tomorrow to decide. After that, these photos go to Ethan, along with some interesting details about your investigation methods. Oh, and Martha? She placed my phone on the table. Don't bother checking for recordings. I had it wiped while we talked. After she left, I sat there, staring at the envelopes. My phone showed no call history, no recordings, no photos from the last 3 months. Even my cloud backup was empty. A text from Ethan appeared. Mom, we need to talk. Lila showed me something disturbing. Please tell me you didn't hire someone to follow her. Another message followed. The wedding's in a week. If you can't support us, maybe it's better if you don't come. Outside, Lila's Mercedes purred to life. Through the rain-streaked windows, I caught her triumphant smile as she pulled away. I picked up the envelope with the money, feeling its weight, the weight of silence, of surrender, of losing my son. Henry would know what to do. But Henry was gone, and I was running out of options. My phone buzzed one last time. An unknown number. Martha, it's Michael. From my hospital bed. We need to talk. I know how to stop her. But we have to move fast. The church's stained glass cast colored shadows across the wedding guests as I slipped into the audio-visual booth. Michael's USB drive felt heavy in my pocket, heavier than the $50,000 I'd left on Lila's doorstep this morning, along with a note. I accept your terms. 5 minutes to ceremony, the wedding coordinator announced through my headset. I watched Ethan pacing at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, while the videographer made final adjustments to the romantic montage Lila had planned to play during her entrance. My hands shook as I plugged in the drive. Mrs. Caldwell. The coordinator's voice crackled. The bride's asking for you. Something about a mother-son moment before the ceremony. In the bridal suite, Lila stood resplendent in designer white, her smile razor-sharp. I knew you'd make the right choice, Martha. Ethan will be so happy you're here to support us. You got what you wanted, I said quietly. The money, the wedding, my silence. Almost. She adjusted her veil. Just one last thing. That drive in your pocket, hand it over. My hand instinctively covered my jacket. What drive? Please. Michael may be in intensive care, but his wife still talks to him. And to me. She held out her hand. The drive. Now. Or I call security and show Ethan those photos right before he walks down the aisle. The weight of Henry's wedding ring on my necklace seemed to burn against my chest. You know what my husband used to say about surgeons? I pulled out the drive. We're at our best when everything goes wrong. I held it out. As she reached for it, the wedding march began. Oops, I said softly. Raw music. Through the walls, we heard my voice from the church speakers. Let's talk inside, followed by Lila's clear response. $50,000 to skip the wedding and never contact Ethan again. Lila's face drained of color. She lunged for the door, but I stepped in her way. That drive you wanted? I nodded toward the window, where Saracen stood at the church's AV controls, giving me a thumbs up. It's amazing how many copies you can make in a hospital room while someone's busy threatening your wife. The recorded conversation continued, filling the church with Lila's threats, her admissions, her calculated manipulation of my son. She slapped me hard. You stupid woman. You've ruined everything. No, I said, touching my stinging cheek. You did that yourself. The door burst open. Ethan stood there, his face ashen. Behind him, wedding guests crowded the hallway, murmuring. Is it true? He asked Lila. All of it? The other engagements, the bankruptcies, threatening my mother? Ethan, baby, I can explain. The trust fund lie? His voice cracked. Was any of it real? Of course it was real. I love you. She reached for him, but he stepped back. Everything I did for us. For our future. No, he said quietly. You did it for yourself. Security appeared, the real kind this time, not Lila's hired muscle. As they led her away, she turned back, her mascara running. You'll regret this, Martha Caldwell. Both of you will. But her threats sounded hollow now, echoing through the empty church as guests filed out, shaking their heads and whispering. Ethan stood motionless, staring at the altar. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have listened. No. I touched his arm gently. You listen to your heart. That's what your father and I always taught you to do. Dad would have seen through her immediately. Actually, I smiled slightly. Your father fell for a gold digger once. Before he met me. It's where he learned to value what's real. Ethan laughed shakily, then sobered. I don't know what happens next. Through the stained glass, sunlight suddenly broke through the clouds, painting the empty church in brilliant colors. I thought of Henry, of all our years together, of the difference between love and possession. What happens next, I said, is we go home, and we start over. Outside, Sarah was erasing the drives, while Michael's statement to the police waited safely in my email. The truth had cost us all something, but lies would have cost so much more. Ethan took my arm, and together we walked out of the church, leaving Lila's shattered dreams of status and wealth behind us. 1 year later, I stood in my kitchen, watching Grace teach Ethan how to properly knead bread dough. Her engagement ring caught the morning light, simple and elegant, just like her. You're being too gentle, she laughed, covering his hands with hers. The dough won't break. The scene blurred slightly, and I busied myself with my coffee to hide the tears. Not sad ones, not anymore. Mom, Ethan noticed anyway. You okay? Just thinking about your father, I said. He was terrible at baking too. The doorbell rang before he could respond. A courier with a thick manila envelope. For Martha Caldwell. Inside was a magazine, Modern Bride. And there she was on page 63, Lila Jenkins Morgan, newly engaged to a tech billionaire twice her age. The accompanying note read simply, You were right. Some dreams cost too much. I slipped the magazine into the recycling bin, choosing not to darken the morning with old shadows. Martha. Grace called from the kitchen. Can you check if we have more yeast? Top shelf, by your books. As I reached for the cabinet, a worn volume of Henry's favorite poetry tumbled out. Something fluttered from between its pages, an envelope, yellowed with age, my name in Henry's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. My dearest Martha, if you're reading this, you've probably just finished fighting one of your battles. You always were a warrior for the people you love. It's why I fell for you, watching you defend that intern from the chief of surgery all those years ago. Remember what I told you then? Sometimes the hardest fight isn't winning. It's knowing when to put down your sword. You've always been better at saving others than saving yourself. I'm leaving this note in my favorite book because I know that's where you'll go when you need guidance. And knowing you, my love, you'll need it right after winning whatever war you're fighting. So here's my final advice. Let joy in. You've earned it. All my love. Henry. Mom. Ethan's voice pulled me back. He stood in the doorway, flower on his cheek. What's that? Your father. I smiled, touching Henry's ring on my necklace. Still giving me advice. Grace appeared behind him, wiping her hands on her apron. The bread's rising. Perfect time for you to tell us about your trip plans. I'd been hesitating about the round-the-world ticket on my desk, worried about leaving Ethan. But looking at them now, flower-covered, happy, whole, I realized Henry was right. It was time to put down my sword. Actually, I said, I was thinking of starting in Japan. Cherry blossom season. That's perfect, Grace beamed. We can come visit after the wedding. Make it a family thing. Family. The words settled warm in my chest, different from before, but no less true. My phone buzzed. Michael Chin saw the magazine. You were right about karma. I thought about Lila, wondering if she'd found what she was looking for, or just another reflection of it. Some questions don't need answers. The bread's collapsing, Ethan announced dramatically. It's supposed to do that, Grace laughed, pulling him back to the kitchen. Come on, Martha. We need your surgical precision for the next part. I tucked Henry's letter into my pocket and joined them, breathing in the scent of yeast and new beginnings. Outside, spring flowers were pushing through the soil in my garden, the ones Grace had helped me plant, their colors bold against the old brick. Sometimes victory isn't in the winning or losing, but in what grows from the aftermath. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, surrounded by real love in all its messy, imperfect glory. I picked up the rolling pin, ready to show them how it's done. After all, I had a lifetime of experience in both healing and letting go. Okay, kids, I said, rolling up my sleeves. Let me show you how surgeon handles dough. Behind us, the morning sun painted our shadows on the wall, three figures blending into one, while somewhere, in the quiet space between heartbeats, I could almost hear Henry laughing.